My name is Elina Tran. I'm 33 years old. I live in Wellington, the city of wind, strong coffee, and hills that make you catch your breath before 8 a.m. I woke up at 5 a.m. like always. No alarm, no one calling. My body knew the rhythm by now, rise before the sun, before the world starts asking things from you. The floor was cold under my feet. My old kettle hummed softly on the stovetop. I opened the window and let the wind greet me like an old friend. It was June in Wellington, quiet, gray, a little blue around the edges. Outside, the neighbor's porch light was still off. The bakery down the hill hadn't opened yet. Only the scent of mint from my window planter crept in, as if waiting for someone who remembered to breathe deeply. I stayed in my oversized sweater, made a cup of matcha, and opened my laptop. Today I had to submit final renderings for a greenhouse project by the Otaki River. I'd sketched it by hand the night before, scanned every line. I liked things that still bore fingerprints. At exactly 5:12 a.m. My phone rang, unknown number, from Vietnam. I didn't answer right away. I stepped out onto the balcony with my mug. The sun was just peeking over the hills, soft and gold. I reached toward it like maybe, just maybe, you could hold on to a moment before it changed you. The phone rang again. I went back inside. I answered. A man's voice, formal, urgent, and within 15 seconds I realized. Something I thought was safe, something I believed I had earned, had quietly slipped out from under me. Hello, Miss Elina Tran. The voice was clipped, polite, but something behind it was pressing hard, like someone trying not to run in a crowded hallway. This is Min, calling from BIDV, the Bank for Investment and Development of Vietnam. We're reaching out regarding a delinquent loan under your name. The balance is currently over 3 billion VND and overdue by 45 days. I blinked, my hand tightened around the ceramic mug. Steam rose past my face, but my chest felt cold. I'm sorry, I said. I don't have any loan with you. A silence, then the shuffle of paper on the other end, followed by a pause that lasted just a second too long. Well, our records show this loan was processed through our Hanoi branch. The identity verification included your Vietnamese ID, date of birth, and a signed power of attorney. He read off the numbers, my old passport, my childhood address, the name of the district where my grandmother used to live. It was me, but not me, not my signature, not my doing. I never signed anything, I said firmly, voice sharpening. I live in New Zealand. I haven't applied for anything in Vietnam in over 8 years. I understand, he replied, trying to sound calm. But the loan is real, and the repayment responsibility falls on you. The line went quiet again. My own breath was louder than his voice now. I ended the call. I didn't scream, didn't cry, just stood there, phone still in hand, as a strange numbness pressed against the inside of my ribs. In my head, a quiet sentence began looping. Someone did this, and they did it knowing I'd never question it. I called my mother first. The line rang 3 times before she picked up. Her voice was casual, soft, as if I had caught her in the middle of peeling fruit. Elina, condo H letter 1EA3, it's early there, isn't it? I didn't answer her question. I didn't have the breath to warm it up with small talk. Did you co-sign a loan in my name? I asked. There was a pause, not long, just enough for me to feel it. She didn't ask, what are you talking about? She didn't say, that must be a mistake. Instead, she sighed, you know your father, he meant well. It's for the land investment, the one in DA and letter 1EB5NG. It's temporary. Once the market recovers, he'll pay it off. I felt my stomach pull tight. You used my name, I said, voice steady but quieter now. You didn't even tell me. Elina, it's just family business. We didn't want to worry you. You already help so much. You forged my documents. Her tone sharpened. Don't use words like that. We're your parents. I stayed quiet. The silence between us began to expand, thick, awkward, and full of things I wasn't sure I wanted answers to. I've sent you money every month, I said finally. Paid off Dad's hospital bills, covered Anne's university tuition. I didn't say anything when you asked for the business license fee, the flight tickets, the temple donation. Elina, she interrupted, you always said you wanted to help. I did, I said, but help has limits, theft doesn't. She went quiet again. Then came the sentence that broke something in me. Don't be dramatic. It's not like you're struggling. You make good money in New Zealand. There it was, the script, the assumption that because I lived abroad, I must be rich. That distance meant detachment. That I was their insurance policy in a country with better currency. I ended the call. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't cry either. I just sat at the small wooden table in my kitchen, lights off, staring at the outline of the teacup I hadn't touched since morning. My phone buzzed 3 more times that night. Dad, Anne. Dai Lan, I didn't answer any of them. Each message that followed had the same core. It's not a big deal. You know how family works. We didn't think you'd mind. But no one said, I'm sorry. We should have asked, are you okay? And in that absence, in that cold, careful silence, I realized they hadn't betrayed me with money. They'd betrayed me with assumption that I would keep giving, that I would never say no, that I didn't need to be seen, just used quietly. And I wondered, how long had that been true? I didn't scream, didn't post about it, didn't call them again demanding anything. There was no dramatic goodbye, no middle-of-the-night confrontation. No teary message typed and deleted 10 times. Instead, I sat down the next morning and did what I always do when I feel lost. I made a list. 3 columns: access, exposure, vulnerabilities. Column 1, every account in Vietnam with my name on it. Savings, joint holdings. 1 old insurance policy I forgot even existed. Column 2, who had copies of my ID? Who had access to my signatures? My aunt, my cousin who once helped me register a business back home, the lawyer they introduced me to just in case. Column 3, everything I'd forgotten to secure. The shared Gmail, the Facebook Messenger I hadn't logged out of, the scanning app I once used to help my mother send PDFs to the bank. That afternoon, I walked into my local bank in Wellington and opened 3 new accounts under my middle name. I set up international transfers, moved every cent, not out of fear, out of clarity. I filed a report with the New Zealand Embassy, flagged my passport number with the consulate, requested a full credit check across Southeast Asia. The banker glanced at me once, her brow lifting. Everything okay? She asked. I smiled, polite, tired. Yes, I said, just updating my life. At home, I changed every password, enabled 2-factor on everything, set up a digital will. Then I took a deep breath and deleted the family group chat. Not archived, deleted. It felt quiet afterward, too quiet, but then a stillness began to settle. The kind that doesn't mean loneliness. The kind that means I'm no longer being watched through invisible threads. That weekend, I took a walk along the bay. The wind was sharp, but the light was gold. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't feel owned. I didn't feel guilty. I felt like a woman walking forward, with nothing in her hands that didn't belong to her. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. No announcement. No farewell dinner. No social media post with a filtered view of the sky and some vague caption about change. I just packed. 1 suitcase, 1 box for shipping, and a file folder labeled What's Mine. A week later, I moved to Lake Tekapo, a quiet town on New Zealand's South Island. Population, small. Tourist season, short. Noise, non-existent. My new place was a rented cabin with wood-paneled walls and windows that faced the water. It smelled like pine and old books. There was no elevator, no doorman, just the sound of wind through lupin fields and the occasional bird tapping at the gutter. I started working freelance, small architecture contracts, mostly green builds for rural properties. No office, no meetings unless necessary. I liked it that way. Here, no one knew my name. No one expected anything from me. No one asked, how's the family? In that tone that assumes everything is warm and intact. Some nights, I'd sit by the lake with a thermos of ginger tea and just watch the water. Cold, still, unbothered. One morning, a woman at the farmer's market asked me where I was from. I paused, not because I didn't know, but because I realized I could choose the answer now. Originally from Vietnam, I said, but I live here now, just me." She smiled, not pitying, not curious, just kind. "That's enough," she said, and handed me a bag of sun-dried tomatoes with no charge. In Tekapo, I learned how to be quiet again, not out of fear, but out of fullness. The kind of silence that says, no one is draining me, no one is naming me, and if they are, they're wrong. It came on a Tuesday, mid-morning. I was repotting the lavender on my front porch when I felt the vibration in my back pocket. A number I didn't recognize, but I knew the rhythm. The +84 country code, the careful wording, the pause before punctuation. It was her. "Elina, it's Mom. I don't want to argue. I didn't know you felt so heavy about everything. We were just trying to get by. You know how hard things are back home. I wish you had told us sooner." I read it twice, then a third time, and all I could think was, sooner. How do you tell someone they've been walking on your spine while calling it love? That night, I didn't respond. I didn't cry. I didn't write a long message I'd never send. I just stood in my little kitchen, barefoot on cool tile, stirring a pot of soup I made for no one but myself. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for my phone to light up. I wasn't hoping for a call that would finally sound like care. I wasn't rehearsing lines to explain why I said no. I was just still, and that stillness felt like peace. 3 days later, another message came. "You've always been the strong one, Elina. We didn't think we had to ask. You just always helped." And that was the problem. They called it strength. I called it silence. They called it love. I called it survival. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because I wasn't anymore. Somewhere between the cabin walls and the Tekapo winds, I had stopped needing to be understood by people who only saw what I could give. I closed my phone, slid it into the drawer, and went outside to watch the sky shift from pale blue to peach. The lavender was starting to bloom. It was a Sunday. The kind of slow, golden Sunday where the lake looked like glass and the wind decided to sleep in. I had spent the morning rearranging books on the shelf, not because they needed it, but because it felt like a small way to take control of something. After lunch, I walked to the edge of Lake Tekapo, thermos in hand, scarf loose around my neck. The clouds were low, trailing just above the water like they didn't want to leave either. The light hit the surface just right, a silver blue shimmer, calm as breath. So I did what I used to do. I took a photo, framed it just so, tilted the horizon, caught the curve of the hill in the background. It was beautiful, the kind of moment I used to send to my mother. "Look, Mom, this is where I am. Wish you could see this. Thinking of you today." I opened the message thread, my thumb hovering above the image. But this time, I didn't send it. Not because I was angry, not because I wanted to punish anyone, but because I realized I didn't need anyone to witness my peace in order for it to be real. This beauty, this softness, this quiet, it belonged to me. I closed the message window, not with bitterness, but with reverence. Then I sat on the edge of a rock, pulled my scarf tighter, and just watched the lake breathe. No one was waiting on the other end, and that, finally, felt like freedom. There was a time I used to keep receipts, not for taxes, but for proof that I had paid, that I had shown up, that I had given without asking anything in return. I had folders labeled family support, screenshots of bank transfers, notes on birthdays, even spreadsheets tracking how much each relative had received over the years. Not to accuse, but to remind myself I wasn't selfish, because they made me feel that way. Any time I hesitated, any time I paused before saying yes. The silence on the other end of the call felt like a punishment, so I gave and gave and gave, like my love had to earn its right to be kept, like my presence needed proof of purchase. I remember once I sent my sister money for her visa application. She said nothing for 3 weeks. Then one day, she messaged, "Need another $200. Forgot to pay courier." "No, thank you." "No, how are you?" Just another tap on the glass, like I was a vending machine with infinite buttons. And I pressed yes, every time, not because I didn't know better, but because I thought love meant sacrifice. That being needed was the same as being wanted. Looking back now, I don't hate her or them, I don't replay the moments trying to rewrite them. What hurts more is the memory of who I became to survive that love. Quiet, reliable, self-erasing. The girl who never said no. The girl who always adjusted her dreams around someone else's emergencies. The girl who smiled through being drained because being seen as cold was worse than being empty. I don't carry those receipts anymore. Not in drawers, not in emails, not in the folds of my heart. I've deleted the spreadsheets, thrown out the folders, unsubscribed from guilt. Because the girl who carried too much finally put it down. And the woman who remains, she walks a little lighter, talks a little softer, loves herself first. The email came on a Wednesday. Subject line, "Your application has been approved." It was from the Department of Internal Affairs. New Zealand's quiet way of saying, "You can begin again." I had filed the paperwork 3 months ago. No fanfare, just a form, a fee, and a quiet click of the mouse. It wasn't a total name change, just one letter. I dropped the middle name my family gave me at birth, the one that meant obedient in Vietnamese, and kept the first and last. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it so I could look at my own name on legal documents and not feel owned by it. Now when I saw it typed out, Elina Tran, it felt clean, like a door had finally closed, and I was the one holding the key. Later that day, I stopped by the post office. I ordered new business cards, updated my driver's license, booked a fresh passport. When the clerk asked, "Any reason for the change?" I smiled small, soft, and said, "Just finally using my real name." He didn't press, and I didn't explain. Because this time, I didn't need anyone to understand in order for it to be real. That night, I took a long walk by the lake. The air was sharp, the stars clear. The kind of night that makes you feel both tiny and invincible at once. And I whispered my name out loud, to the trees, to the dark, to myself. Elina Tran. Not theirs, not conditional, not for sale. Just mine. And for the first time in my life, I said it without flinching. If you've ever been the one they called, because you always say yes. If you've ever wired money from a cold apartment to a warmer country, while skipping dinner yourself. If you've ever heard the word family used as a leash instead of a hand, then I see you. I see the way you try to make everyone comfortable, even when your own heart is folded up in the corner. Asking softly, "Do I matter if I stop giving?" I see how they praised your strength, but never asked about your fatigue. How they said, "You're so reliable," as if that was love, not survival. If you've ever carried too much, too quietly, for too long, this is your permission to put it down. You are not selfish for having limits. You are not cruel for walking away from people who only show up when they're hungry. You are not ungrateful for protecting your peace. Let them say what they will. Let them rewrite your story in whispers you'll never hear. You don't owe them a response. You don't owe them access to your healing. If you've ever stood in front of a mirror and didn't recognize the woman who kept saying yes through gritted teeth, then maybe today is the day. You say something different. Maybe today, you say your own name out loud without apology. I am not a wallet. I am not a convenience. I am not a placeholder for someone else's irresponsibility. You are you, still standing, still full of light, even after they tried to drain you, and that is more than enough.